Grand evening, everyone. It is Sunday, October 5th, 2025. It is 2320 hours in the evening, your time here in Texas. 2320. Okay. Just checking the audio there. Moving on. This is initially a live stream recording that is posted to the YouTube channel. So we're going to start with this here from some days ago, October 1st. Russia hit the Denmark infrastructure with a massive cyber attack as the EU leaders were gathered there in Copenhagen. So when they had that, I believe it was an EU summit there. Yep, it was the EU summit in Copenhagen. Russia did a massive cyber attack on them as they gathered there. It's very telling of Russia's intentions. Okay, let's just checking the audio again. Moving on from that, so that's very interesting what Russia did there. It's an incredible act of war, I would think. That's a massive act of war to attack the EU summit with a cyber attack while they were all over there in Copenhagen. Now, back to this. I believe we might have been talking about this recently. There is a nuclear disaster at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine that could occur if the blackout continues. Fuel for the backup diesel generators will only last 10 days. So once that runs out, it is going to be possibly the largest radiological disaster this world has ever seen. There's, I believe, 6 nuclear reactors at Zaporizhia. I believe Chernobyl had 1 or 2, and that affected a large area. It affected like all of the Chernobyl area. A whole lot of that area is seriously affected. Even to this day, there's radiation in some areas in Chernobyl. So there's about 6 days left until they run out of diesel at ZNPP. And that place has been heavily bombarded and attacked, the nearby area over there, anyway. So that is going to have a major effect on Ukraine and Europe if that happens. A lot of radiation, especially fallout thing, it's quite complex. The radiological disaster, it would go into the atmosphere depending on which way the wind blows. It will go into parts of Russia or Europe, and it would probably take out the people who are over there, a lot of them anyway, that are in the way of all that radiation. I believe it would be fallout or radioactive cloud that's moving from the disaster. I'm not specifically sure how that would work. Whichever way it goes, it's going to affect people in a very negative way when it reaches them, whether it's Russia or Europe. So that is huge. Huge news. Possible Possibly the largest radiological disaster this world has seen may occur in the next week at Zaporizhia, far larger than Chernobyl. The reactors may go into a meltdown when those when the fuel for the backup diesel generators runs out. Now, also on that day, October 1st, right around there, the chief of staff of the French army stated that forces must be ready as early as tonight for high intensity warfare. So, France is totally preparing for war now against Russia. France is one of the only nuclear capable countries that is openly known in Europe. It's a very interesting thing. France has been preparing for high casualties in the past. They've been preparing for high casualty events. Now they're openly preparing the French military for war against Russia. Now we have this here. Was also from the Wall Street Journal. That is not a good news source, but there are other sources that have confirmed this. It's all out in the open. The U.S. is considering sending Tomahawk and Barracuda cruise missiles together with other U.S. ground and air launched long range missiles. The U.S. is going, so pretty much the U.S. is going to provide long range targeting intelligence to Ukraine. And the U.S. is also calling on European states to also provide Ukraine with the intelligence needed for long range strikes against Russia. So there's going to be long range deep strikes into Russia, very likely with even Tomahawk and Barracuda cruise missiles from the U.S. So, along with others. So, Tomahawk missiles are some of the most advanced missiles in the U.S. arsenal. It's quite secretive, every detail about them. Um, so, we'll see if the U.S. goes as far as sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Nonetheless, it's huge news that there's going to be long and deep strikes into Russia, meaning they're probably going to hit the Kremlin. President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine has actually said they'll consider hitting the Kremlin if they get what they're about to, these long range missiles. So that's going to be huge when Ukraine hits the Kremlin and other parts of Moscow with these long range strikes from US and European intelligence for all that targeting information. Now, moving on from that, we have North Korea openly coming out. North Korea has officially warned Ukraine not to get help from NATO against Russia. Otherwise, it will take action against it. So that means North Korea's threatening Ukraine to deploy more troops into Ukraine, probably uh, long range missile strikes themselves. We'll see what they do. That's huge that North Korea has come out, threatened Ukraine like that, and they may deploy more into Ukraine. That's huge coming from North Korea, pretty much a vassal state of China. So the East is really coming together to fight the West, and the West is doing quite the same. So we'll see exactly what develops from that. It's escalating massively. That is one of the things that is. We'll see exactly what North Korea does soon, um, because Ukraine is asking for more help from NATO. They're pretty much doing that already, especially when it comes to the long range strikes we just mentioned there. Very interesting news that North Korea may get further involved in Ukraine. North Korea has sent some troops to Ukraine, but it seems they'll be doing more in the near future. Not long after that, around the same time, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia will retaliate against the militarization of Europe, since Europe is preparing for war against Russia and all those possibilities. Just that, just the militarization, Russia is, Putin is now saying that they're going to retaliate against Europe simply because of the militarization and the preparedness that Europe is doing now for Russia and those others, the other Eastern countries. It does have a lot to do with that. Um, Iran, China, North Korea, those are the main ones. Iran, China, North Korea, India may stay neutral. We'll see what they do. But those are three massive countries and powerful ones that seem to real soon be ready for war. They may be going into Europe soon. Russia is very likely to go into Europe soon, and it is looking like it'll be the Baltic states first. That's what it's been looking like for months now. We had flights recently, a lot of serious reconnaissance flights from NATO. They were doing a lot of reconnaissance, preparing for a possible Russian invasion into Europe. Huge news that Putin actually came out and said they will retaliate against the militarization of Europe. That'll almost certainly be in a military sense. We'll see what Russia does in the coming days. So sometime after that, we had, they call it unidentified drones. Later on, it was identified that it was Russian. So 15 Russian drones reportedly flew in a swarm over Elsenborn, Buchenbach Air Base in eastern Belgium last night before entering German airspace, according to defense officials of the two NATO member states. So that was Belgium and Germany that these 15 Russian drones flew into. So that's another drone incursion. Russia has done a drone incursion into German airspace and Belgium airspace. That's huge. Huge that they actually went into German airspace. That's a tremendous escalation. Germany is not going to stand for anything of that sort. They are not friendly to the Russians to this day. There's always been that rivalry between Russia and Germany. But Europe is preparing. Europe is doing full militarization, and Russia is soon to retaliate against that. And this was from Mike Adams, the health ranger. And he's even saying war is imminent. Gerald Celente was right. When all else fails, they take you to war. They sure do. This was from, I don't know, some kind of commentary account. This is very interesting. This is great for the sovereignty of the United States. Declaration of authority and summons. Let me check my audio real quick. Okay, it's good. Declaration of authority and summons. By the authority vested in the President of the United States for America as Commander-in-Chief under Article 2 of the Constitution and by the immutable laws of common law sovereignty, it is hereby declared. 1. Lawful command under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that's the UCMJ. Every flag officer of the United States Armed Forces by oath and law is bound to obey the lawful orders of the Commander-in-Chief. The UCMJ affirms that all generals and admirals remain subject to such orders, including the command to assemble. 2. Sovereign right under common law. From ancient precedent to modern practice, the head of a sovereign republic or kingdom holds the prerogative to summon his military leaders for counsel, recognition of authority, and the reordering of the nation's defense. This right is both inherent and incontestable. Very interesting. 3. Summons to assembly. Therefore, by order of His Excellency of the Western Kingdom and President of the United States of America, all flag officers are hereby summoned to Virginia on September 30th, 2025. That was that big general and admirals meeting that they had there in Quantico, where the Secretary of the Department of War was even there, and President Trump. Okay, continuing with this. This assembly shall formally recognize and reaffirm allegiance to the constitutional republic of the United States of America. 4. Restoration of sovereignty. Upon this recognition, all military outposts and operations abroad that were established under British Commonwealth or foreign dominion shall be lawfully closed or transferred, securing America's independence in full. 5. Binding duty. This order is issued in fulfillment of the President's sacred duty to uphold the Constitution, protect the people, and preserve the sovereignty of the Republic. All officers are bound by oath, honor, and law to obey. And then there's the presidential seal right there, and it was signed by President Donald J. Trump. Huge. So the U.S. is now a sovereign nation. I did forget for a while that um, the U.S. was literally like some kind of incorporation. Like it was not a sovereign. It was not a full sovereign nation under common law like this. This is the first time in American history, just before the 250th anniversary of the country's founding in 1776, that this has happened. This is absolutely historical and huge. Full common law sovereignty for the United States of America. As this guy said, the Republic is free again. Very interesting, very historic news right here that I just read. This is also huge and historic news. This one is for Japan. Sanae Takaichi, Sanae Takaichi becomes Prime Minister of Japan. She's apparently conservative. She's strong for sure. And she is now the new Prime Minister of Japan.
よって高市早苗君をもって当選者と決しました。よって高市早苗君をもって当選者と決しました。
And there she is, Sanae Takaichi, the new Prime Minister of Japan. Such an honorable and respectful people that they are. Huge news for Texas. This is really something. This was posted by Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. President Trump supports the new Texas Stock Exchange. He knows that Texas is the future of finance in America. I would say even far more than that. I would say finance and energy and AI and robotics for sure. President Trump said, corrupt Letitia James is costing New York State hundreds of billions of dollars in lost business. No company or individual wants to be there knowing that she's the attorney general. She is a complete and total disaster who tried running against Kathy Hochul for governor and only got 1% of the vote in polls and quit. She then went back to her witch hunt against President Donald J. Trump and others. Until this, he says, scum is removed from the Attorney General's office, no company will move to New York, and few companies will be using the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ for going public. The new Texas Exchange will be taking all of this business away, and we are talking hundreds of billions of dollars. Huge news for Texas. absolutely amazing that Texas is going to be getting a some kind of stock exchange quite late. This should have happened many years ago. I would say, in my opinion, it's very late to be doing this. This should have happened uh, eight. This should have happened in his first term. Simply put, huge news though for Texas, nonetheless. Now we've been having massive riots and the like in Chicago, especially. It is a total war zone, as I expected. There's a lot of riots, a lot of unrest going on in Chicago. That's a great example. And Oregon, that's just about the next place where a lot of chaos and unrest and riots are going on. So, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he says, I fully authorize the president to call up 400 members of the Texas National Guard to ensure safety for federal officials. You can either fully enforce protection for federal employees or get out of the way and let the Texas Guard do it. No guard can match the training, skill, and expertise of the Texas National Guard. They defend our country with pride. America must also know that Texas still has thousands of National Guard assisting with the border security. So we're going to have Texas National Guard that are being deployed to Illinois, Oregon, and other locations within the United States. So that's huge news for this country. Huge domestic news. That was this is apparently the Illinois governor. Not a very good one. Not a very good governor of Illinois right now. So the Texas National Guard is going to bring order through all the locations that they will be deployed at. That's just about everything. Alex Jones is actually calling it a civil war uh, due to what due to something that the Chicago governor, the Illinois governor, is doing. That's very interesting. So it's very tense domestically in this country, especially when it comes to all the federal agents such as ICE and the other federal agents and forces that are deployed throughout the country, um, bringing order and reducing the illegal immigration and doing deportations, all of that. So we'll see what further develops with that and all these other world events and war that is going on in the world. Another thing I heard recently is Israel is going to attack 4 countries, I believe Iran, Lebanon, possibly Iraq, and Yemen. They're going to do large strikes on those countries, especially Iran. So that's about to really start up, and the Middle East is going to be on fire. So the war with Israel and Iran will continue imminently, very soon. That'll be another massive war to be talking about. Iran and Israel, it's not just when it comes to Iran, it's Iran and NATO. So the war between Iran and NATO is going to be continuing. It shall continue very soon, imminently. as I said. That'll be all for now. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I will be back with more news very soon, I'm sure. We've had a lot of massive breaking news to cover here tonight. And there's also a donation link in the description. Yep, that'll just about do it for now. I will be back very soon with the next one. Love, light, and blessings to you all.